Hey, what's up guys, Nate here. Welcome back to Sonic Academy, and today we are checking out the brand new Cubase 12 from Steinberg. Now you may be wondering, Cubase 12, we've missed out on 11.5. Well, they kind of updated it now to be in line with Nuendo, so that the two are released at the same time. It's also deviated from its December release date, which is traditional for most of the Cubase updates. However, that's because of one big new feature which has been requested for ages. Cubase is running, and I'm holding this in my hand because the dongle is no longer needed. There is a new online activation process now that you can activate your machines online, meaning that you can now install Cubase on multiple machines at the same time, which is a great addition to this. Now, if you have Halion 6 or a Groove Agent, the full version, or Backbone, or any of those are still going to require this. You don't want to throw this away just yet, but eventually those are going to be brought into the fold and also run through that license manager as well. Currently it's Nuendo, Cubase and Dorico are all online with the new activation server. Now we're going to take a look at some of the new features in this video. I'll mention some of them, but I want to kind of highlight my 5 favorites in this new update. Let's take a look and check these out. Right, so to kick things off, without a doubt, my favorite new feature that's been included in Cubase 12, Steinberg has completely redone the implementation of control services with a brand new API and a scripting process that you can basically make any controller do pretty much anything you want in Cubase. It's very intuitive and it's very extensive. So I've been playing around with this for a while, and you can see now in the lower zone here, you actually have a controller section as well, the MIDI Remote section. If we click on the home button, you can see I've started programming a few things in here. There are a number of scripts that come with this, stuff from Arturia, Akai, Korg, Novation as well. I think gradually as people start adopting this, there'll be a lot more available just out the box. But it's pretty simple to actually construct these yourself. I've got a Machine Mark III and a Complete Control S61 Mark II in the studio, which I've started programming. This will do various different pages as well. However, the way that the Native Instruments stuff works, the pages are kind of located in the hardware itself. Hence, I've duplicated pages in the control panel here. This one's still a work in progress, but you'll see running in MIDI mode, I've got things like copy in here, paste. I've got a volume control on this here. We've got even an AI knob, so that you can actually hover over anything in Cubase and just use the AI knob to control that. We'll take a look at the complete control that I've started working on here as well. So the MIDI mode, as soon as you switch that into MIDI, you'll see, for example, on my audio channel that I have here now, we can play around with some of the controls that I've set up here. So, for example, like I said, the AI knob, if I decide I want to, say for instance, do EQ, but I want to be able to record that live, I can just use the AI knob at any point where the mouse is located, and that will let me dial that in. We can look at the other controls that I've set up here too. I've got a volume control set up there, panning left and right. My switches I've set up to, there's no instrument loaded there, but to minimize that, we can move up and down channels, and you'll see once it goes there, it's automatically, the legacy stuff is still included here as well, so it's automatically switched over to my complete control now as well. So I can go back to MIDI, and now these will function. Notice as well it's taken on the color of the channel as well, which lets you easily see where you are in your setup. In this case now I can use the instrument to bring up my complete control directly from there. We'll go back to the audio channel. I've got stuff like low cut frequencies, etc. All the stuff that I use a lot. I can low cut, solo, mute. And these icons are automatic once you set these up to Cubase functions. It's not just a MIDI control. It works very much like the Mackie control but just taking MIDI CC, and you can map it on these setups here. There is an extensive MIDI control surface editor that you can add in new knobs and kind of arrange all your controls the same way as your controllers are. So pretty much anything from synthesizers to mixing surfaces, you can really kind of get into them now and create complex control setups that can manage macros or logical presets in the logical editor, which has also been updated. It's a very, very nice update and very well done. I look forward to seeing what people come up with these options available to them now inside of Cubase. Right, so the second thing I want to look at is new plugins. There's always a bunch of new plugins that get added with each Cubase update. This one's no different. There's a number of them that have just been brought up to speed with the UI. Stuff like step filter has been given a new interface and a few extra controls now. There's also a randomize function in this. So you can dial in a pattern and then just sort of randomize these amounts as well to get fairly organic filter sweeps going on. So a few little minor adjustments to certain plugins like that. The one that I'm most impressed with so far has been Razor, which is a brand new limiter that Steinberg has included. It's a really fast attack limiter, this, and I've been very impressed with the results that I get from this. It's incredibly transparent, but very good at keeping things contained. We can just take a listen to this one as well. So you can see I'm pushing this incredibly hard, and there's not a whole lot of degradation to the signal there. Even with the fast mode on. It's only when you start to bring the release time down. But still, that's incredibly impressive for the amount of gain reduction that we're doing there. You also have a compare function, which is an auto gain, which is really nice to have. As well as intersample clip detection or true peak limiting. So this is a really great addition, this as well. Then supervision, there are now a number of new modules available in this as well. If we have a look here, we've got the spectral keyboard. So the spectral keyboard, this is going to highlight sort of weighted frequencies and overlay it over a keyboard, so you can see where dominant frequencies and such are. There's also a VU meter now as well, which is a really nice addition to this as well. So a couple of updates there to check out. The other big plugin that's been released with this is FX Modulator. Now this one's great. There's a lot that you can do with this. I wasn't as impressed by this as I am with something like Shaperbox, but that Shaperbox is obviously a third-party plugin which you would have to buy. For a stock plugin, there's plenty of interesting stuff going on here. You've got a collection of effects that can be modulated via the envelope generator or the pattern sequencer at the top here. We can load up something like a pitch shifter, add a module and load a pitch shifter, for example. And you'll have the mix formant, for example, that can be edited with steps. Obviously, these can be synced to your tempo and looped. We'll go through one or two of the presets here. So lots of kind of glitchy stuff that you can do with these. It's really cool for adding sort of extra movement to synth parts and such, or dynamic filtering and various other different things that you can come up with. It's nice that they've given you the option to kind of layer quite a few effects together, even if you're not modulating them as well. Nice to have those in one plugin like this that you can layer up your effects. And then also there's a filter bank so you can kind of focus them on specific frequencies within the plugin too. And lastly, the other plugin that's been added is a brand new dither. The old dither has been discontinued, and there is a new one from Mart Digital. It's a collaboration between Mart Digital and Steinberg. Not much to say here, but great for your mastering chain that this is now been updated and available for you. So another new feature I'm really fond of is they've added in scale quantization to the Veriphrase element in Cubase. Now this is fantastic when you're working with vocals. I found it particularly useful with stuff that's kind of in weird keys and things like that, or weird scales, particularly like this. For example, I pulled out a vocal from UVI's World Suite, and we'll take a look at this now. If we double click here, we can edit with Very Audio, and you'll see we get the notes pulled up here, very much like Melodyne. And we can make edits and stuff like we used to, but we can come down to the scale assistant now and set up. So we know that this is in a C minor. We can set up a C minor here. Let's go with a natural minor. And you'll see these black notes are outside of the scale, and then the sort of lightened versions here are inside of the scale. And we can just highlight all of these now and just quantize the pitches. So this scale is not exactly a C minor. It would be some Eastern scale. I'm not 100% sure what exactly it would be, but let's take a listen to what this is going to do. And we can just come down here and quantize the pitches now into a C Aeolian. And there you have it. Let's even try doing a major. So we'll go to a major scale, and let's go up to a D major as well. And then once again, just quantize the pitches. And there you have it. Super useful tool that, and obviously you can do all the usual stuff like shift formants, straighten the curves here. There's quite a lot of pitch moving around between notes here if you wanted to straighten that out a little bit. Maybe even correct the pitch slightly. So a really, really cool set of tools for working with vocals. And this can obviously apply to any sort of pitched instrument as well, inside of Very Audio. And to tie in with this functionality, Cubase will also now extract MIDI information or chords from polyphonic audio sources. Let's say, for example, you wanted to quantize this to a piano part that's been played. You can bring the audio in and have Cubase analyze that for chords, pull the chords from that polyphonic audio material, place them in a chord track, and then use the chord track as a guide to quantize the scales of your vocals inside of Very Audio. So really, really quick to kind of get things to match, especially, like I said, these Eastern vocals, which are a little bit hard to match up with modern material sometimes. This is a great way to kind of make those changes automatically for you. So whilst on the topic of audio, another new feature that's been added in Cubase 12 is they have completely replaced the MPEX algorithm for time stretching. There's an entirely new algorithm in place now. So the Elastic algorithm is the new one available inside of Cubase 12. It's available by default on the time stretch tool. You can still access the MPEX algorithm via the processes here. Go on to time stretch. You'll see you can still get all the legacy ones. They are still available here, but not by default in the arrange page. But Elastic Pro, this is the new one. Let's bring the ratio right up. I'm going to give it a really extreme example. Obviously, this kind of extreme setting, you are going to hear artifacts, but just to kind of really highlight that for you, we'll switch over to the MPEX instead. So you see MPEX is capped out at 200%, and the Elastic, you can just carry on going with that. So they were right up to 1,000% now for that, which is really cool for sound design stuff. That sort of insane amount of time stretching, it was never available before. You have that at your fingertips now in this new version of Cubase 12. So nice little addition that. So also while we're on the subject of time stretching, there's been some updates made to free warping and audio warping of audio parts. Firstly, if you open up this in the bottom section here, you'll notice as well that there's been a few updates to the sample editor views here, some UI adjustments and new features and things. The audio warp, now if you have multiple sources selected, you can actually add audio warp markers using the free warp tool here to both simultaneously and warp those together. Really nice feature for, let's say, working with backing vocals and lead vocals together, but you want to get timing a little bit better. You can now do these all together as one part using warp markers on the master one, and it will work on the second as well. Even if you've got extra warp markers on the second part, these might constrain the amount that you can warp it by slightly as they're not removed, but it really helps to be able to edit these all together. And you also have free warping in the arrange page as well, and it can be done right there, not just inside the sample editor. Plenty that you can do to kind of move your audio around fluidly inside of Cubase 12 now. So another new feature that I'm pretty excited about, it's one of the smaller updates in this release, but it's a huge help for me, and that's the render in place has been expanded now slightly. This used to be a Nuendo feature, but it's been carried forth into Cubase 12 now as well, and that's the ability to export parts directly from here, but to a folder externally, so it doesn't just render in place onto your arrange page. Previously, what I would have to do is go into the export mixed audio mixdown and export everything as stems. But quite often I want to just be able to export loops for either filing in my library or to send loops as part of a remix pack or something. And right now you can just kind of select a bunch of these, and let's say you want to save these into a library somewhere. You can just go to export selected events now. It'll bring up a dialog box that's very much the same as the render in place that you have normally. You can choose whether you want this to run through the master effects, complete signal path, as separate events, etc. But then you can just go and add in a file location at the bottom, and voila, just hit export and it will run those with all the effects, etc. that's on there. And this applies to instruments as well. If this is a MIDI loop, you can just highlight specific loops of that, export those as audio loops to an external library that you can save for later or send off to a client or a remix artist or whatever. It's a really nice little time-saving thing. And again, also on the subject of render in place, another feature that they've added in now is the ability to include sidechaining info into render in place as well. So previously, if you had a sidechain, let's say a kick sidechaining a loop, when you render in place just that loop, it doesn't solo the kick at the same time. There is a setting now that you can switch Cubase to listen to any sidechains as well. So any compressors that might be ducking sounds on the part that you are rendering in place will now actually listen to the sidechain key and affect it correctly. Previously, again, I would have to do that at the stem mixdown stage because then I'd be bouncing the kick trigger as well as the other parts all simultaneously at the same time. You no longer have to do that now. Let's say if you're going from a VST instrument, you're wanting to render that down to audio, you can have the sidechain trigger kick in when you do that render in place function as well. It's another real quality of life thing there for me personally that I really like. Right, so lastly, the last feature that I want to look at, which I think is going to be a fantastic feature as well, is the ability to run Aura extensions directly in the arrange page now. So if you're not familiar with Aura 2 extensions, it's a sort of universal protocol to allow audio editing programs to talk to one another. Stuff like Melodyne, for example, or Steinberg's spectral layers would work in this way. Hopefully Isotope will get their act together and get RX functioning correctly with Aura 2 as well. That is on the horizon, but not quite ready just yet. But you'll see on the audio tracks now, you've got this extension selection over here, what you can do is on this audio channel now, we'll just click extension and we can open up spectral layers. For example, I don't have Melodyne installed, but if you open up spectral layers as an extension, you'll see now when you edit this, you actually have the spectral layers interface come up underneath. Now you can do selections and editing on this directly inside of this window here, and it'll update into the Cubase project without you having to leave Cubase. If you're a Melodyne user, you will be able to edit Melodyne directly in this window without having to go into the Melodyne window externally and do that and re-import it back, which is a great addition. Like I said, for me, I use RX loads. So having RX functionality like this as soon as it's ready is going to be a really, really nice feature. Be able to do all sorts of repair work on audio directly in this without having to even open or export RX outside of Cubase. It's going to be really, really handy to have this on hand. Right, so that's all I'm going to focus on today. Those are 5 of the sort of biggest updates for me that I'm really excited about in this release. There are a number of different things that have been updated. Tons of small updates again, as usual with Cubase. Often it's these small quality of life updates for me that are really, really great with new Steinberg releases. So a number of other updates to keep an eye out for. There's been a bunch of audio engine improvements. There's a number of new features in the logical editor if you are that way inclined to edit logical presets. Very, very powerful tool though, so you should get into that. There's expanded performance metering, Dolby Atmos support, which is something I'm quite keen to look into at some point as well. A bunch of new editing updates, slip editing, nudge commands that have been updated. There's new range selection improvements. As I said, creating chords from audio events, very nice feature as well. And if you're a Mac user, you'll be really happy to hear that Cubase 12 is now Apple Silicon compatible. And even for AMD users, Cubase has improved the processor scheduling for processors with large numbers of cores, things like Threadrippers and such like that. I believe it handles up to 32 cores now effectively, which is also a great update if you're using one of those processors. So all in all, my impressions, it is more of a sort of 11.5 update. It's not a huge set of features, but that said, there are some really, really handy things in here that I'm quite excited about, especially the control mapping. I think that's a really inspired update to Cubase 12, and I'm going to have a lot of fun programming controller mappings for that. And let us know what you think about the new Cubase 12 in the comments. If you are interested in learning these new functions in detail, we are going to have a updated how to use Cubase at Sonic Academy to kind of bring our Cubase tutorials up to speed with the latest software. So go check that out if you are interested. All right, guys, thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I shall see you soon right here at Sonic Academy. Till then, take care.
Thanks everyone for watching. We really appreciate all the support from you guys. If you love this video, then smash a like, and if you want to be notified about new videos, hit the subscribe and notification buttons. Peace!